Alright, GRE 503 Level 2 is all about matching linear equations to their graphs. So you don't actually have to be able to graph the linear equation itself, but you need to understand the components of linear equations to match it to its graph. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you how to graph, and we're going to talk about the components of the graph as we're graphing them. So if we look at this equation, it's really difficult to, without making a table, to graph something that looks like this. This is in standard form. We want it to be in this form. Y equals mx plus b. And as a reminder, m is our slope, and b is our y-intercept. So, if we want to make this into y equals mx plus b form, first we need to subtract the 15x. So we'll have 5y equals negative 15x minus 25. And then we're going to divide everything by 5. So we'll have y equals negative 3x minus 5. Alright, so we know from this that our slope is negative 3 and that our y-intercept is negative 5. So if we're going to look at where that stuff would be on the graph, let's start with the y-intercept. So our y-intercept's at negative 5. That means it intersects, or it goes through the y-axis at negative 5, which is right here. So if you're matching equations with their graphs, first look at what the y-intercept is and see if it's the only graph that goes through that point. If there's more than one graph that goes through there, then you can look at the slope. The slope here is negative 3, which could also be written as negative 3 over 1. Remember that slope is rise over run. So our rise is negative 3, so we're going to go down 3, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, and right 1. You'll notice here that I'm going to have a negative slope, which is what we want. It's supposed to be negative 3. And then let's continue making points. But the idea here is we're going to have a nice line right here that has a slope of negative 3, and it goes through the y-axis at negative 5. And so you should be able to pick out the correct graph from several. So if you were given several different graphs, you should be able to pick those out. Alright, and then it tells us to identify the slope, which we just did, so right here, and label the x and y intercepts. So our y-intercept is right here, and I'm going to label it as 0, because our x value is 0, and negative 5. Our x-intercept is a little different. We know that for our x-intercept, y is equal to 0. So x-intercept, we know that y is equal to 0. So then if we're going to put 0 into our equation to find x, okay, then 5 times 0 is 0. We'll have 15x equal to negative 25. Divide both sides by 15. X is equal to, and negative 25/15 is negative 1 2/3, or negative 1.6 repeating, which looks about right. Okay, so our x-intercept is negative 1 2/3, comma 0. I'll try to make sure that they're nice in the future, nicer. Let's look at number 2 here. All this is asking for is the coordinates of the x and y intercepts. So remember, x-intercept, y is equal to 0. Y-intercept, x is equal to 0. So let's split this into two problems. If y is equal to 0, we can just go ahead and plug in 0 for y and solve for x. Okay, 4 times 0 is 0. If we're solving for x, we want to subtract 16 from both sides. So negative 16 equals negative 12x. Divide both sides by negative 12. And we'll get x is equal to, and you're going to type that in your calculator, negative 16 divided by negative 12. And we get 1.3 repeating. It's asking for the coordinates, so you're going to put as a coordinate 1.3 repeating, comma, 0. That's your coordinate. You could also write it as a fraction if you want to use that magical math button. So 4/3, comma 0 is also acceptable. All right, let's do the same idea, except now we're going to find, this was our x-intercept. Now we're going to find our y-intercept. So let's plug in 0 for x, so 4y equals negative 12 times 0 plus 16. 4y is equal to 0 plus 16, because negative 12 times 0 is 0. And then the right side simplifies to just being 16. 0 plus 16 is 16. Divide by 4. Y is equal to 4. And then again, we want to have a coordinate. So x is 0. Y is 4. So our answers here, that's our y-intercept. And one of these, I don't care which form you put it in, is our x-intercept. And that's it for level 2. You actually won't have to provide any graphs, but you will have to match the equation with the graphs so you need to know about our slope, we need to know about y-intercepts and x-intercepts. Let me know if you have any questions.